The calm before the storm shattered on the morning of September 14, 2025, off the coast near Puerto Cabo, when Venezuela launched a salvo of 7 P-800 Onyx supersonic missiles at the American cargo ship MV Liberty Star, a direct, brazen strike on a vessel carrying 120 million in essential goods and an attempt to seize control of one of the Caribbean's most vital trade routes. But the United States was not intimidated. At 05:00 a.m., just 15 miles from Puerto Cabello, Venezuela's largest port in Carabobo State, and a choke point through which more than 400 tankers and container ships pass weekly, moving roughly $2.3 billion in goods every 7 days. The Liberty Star, a 60,000 deadweight cargo ship loaded with machinery, medicine and fuel and crewed by 28 civilians, steamed eastward under the protective watch of the guided missile destroyer USS Arleigh Burke, which, with 300 sailors aboard, swept the horizon with its Aegis radar and stood ready to shield America's maritime lifeline. Tensions had been rising after Caracas imposed sudden tariffs on foreign ships and began deploying Bastion P coastal missile batteries armed with P-800 Onyx missiles, each some 28 feet long, weighing over 3 tons and capable of Mach 2.6 speeds with a warhead of up to 660 pounds, signaling an ambition to assert control over international waters and directly challenge U.S. presence. Intelligence had already hinted at unusual troop movements, and satellite imagery showed launchers being prepared near Puerto Cabo. At 5:22 a.m., under the sodium lights of the port, Bastion trucks rolled into position, troops completed their final checks, and 7 steel arrows lit the sky as they screamed across the dark sea toward the Liberty Star and the Arleigh Burke, the destroyers. Radar lit up with 7 crimson, tracks closing at nearly 1900 meth, a distance of 180 miles that would be covered in under 5 minutes. And inside the Arleigh Burke's Battle Information Center, the alarms and shouted commands were immediate as sailors rushed to stations, the weapons officer confirming multiple incoming missiles. The crew of 320 men and women bracing for the confrontation they had trained for but never truly experienced. The Pentagon's policy to pair every American merchant vessel with a warship was about to be tested. Would 300 sailors and an Aegis shield be enough to protect $120 million in cargo against the fury of coastal supersonic firepower? Or would Venezuela's bold strike invite a devastating American counterattack that could reshape the balance of power at sea? The USS Arleigh Burke's Aegis system roared to life as the incoming storm closed in, hatches snapping open, and SM-6 interceptors blazing skyward while Phalanx CIWS guns spun with furious speed, their barrels glowing red as they spat streams of fire into the dawn sky. The Caribbean, once calm, erupted into a maelstrom of light and sound as explosions ripped across the heavens. 5 of Venezuela's Onyx supersonic missiles shattered in midair, torn apart before they could ever reach their targets. But 2 broke through. One malfunctioned, plunging into the sea with a thunderous detonation that sent shockwaves surging across the water, tossing fishing boats like children's toys. The other plummeted erratically, exploding prematurely and raining debris into the waves, its violent impact rattling the Liberty Star's steel hull and spilling millions of dollars worth of cargo into disarray. For the 28 civilian sailors aboard, as well as for the captains of 20 nearby merchant ships, panic surged into full-blown terror. Vessels scattered across the lanes, captains screaming SOS calls over the radio net as the Caribbean suddenly felt like the end of the world. Venezuela had fired the first strike. America's shield had held, and now the sword was ready. At 5:54 a.m., Washington's patience snapped. Orders coursed through encrypted channels. Retaliate, but keep the shipping lanes open. Intelligence confirmed the target. A P-8 Poseidon patrol plane locked its sensors on Puerto Cabello, Venezuela's largest naval shipyard, a sprawling 2 million square foot complex of dry docks, missile storage facilities and workshops humming with more than 850 workers. Satellite images revealed neatly stacked missile tubes, each worth millions, waiting in the yards like fuel tanks for a coming inferno. The War Council's decision was swift. Counterattack immediately, but with surgical precision. 3 F/A-18E Super Hornets, armed with 6 AGM-158 JASSM cruise missiles with ranges beyond 300 nautical miles, would strike from above, while the USS Arleigh Burke launched 5 Tomahawk cruise missiles from the sea. 11 missiles in total, a $60 million package of destruction, would fall within minutes. For the 300 sailors aboard the destroyer, the arithmetic was brutal but simple. Better to expend millions in firepower than to see American civilians massacred at sea. The order was given. By 6:05 a.m., the sky tore open. 3 Super Hornets surged into the dawn, their wings releasing 6 precision-guided JASSMs that streaked low across the Caribbean waves. Out at sea, the Burke's vertical launch cells thundered open, releasing 5 Tomahawks on their deadly course. 11 weapons in all converging on one single target, Puerto Cabello shipyard. Within minutes, the strike descended. JASSMs slammed into missile storage depots and assembly hangars. Tomahawks ripped into hardened workshops, weapon yards, and power grids that sustained the docks. Fireballs erupted, steel beams buckled and groaned, and dry docks shook as if struck by an earthquake. Overhead, MQ-9 Reaper drones captured every frame of devastation. 4 major manufacturing plants obliterated. 7 colossal cranes twisted and broken, and 70% of the shipyard's operational capacity reduced to rubble in a single wave. Stacks of missile tubes worth millions melted into twisted scrap. Precision machinery, testing benches, and power systems were annihilated. Initial assessments estimated the damage at $350 to $450 million, with replacement measured not in months but in years. Yet the destruction wasn't limited to infrastructure. Despite warnings and alerts, nearly 850 workers had been present that morning. The attack left at least 120 casualties, 32 confirmed dead and 88 wounded. Many rushed to overwhelmed hospitals. Those numbers would become seared into the bitter memory of Venezuela's war effort. The Caribbean had changed in one morning. America's shield had proven unbreakable, its sword unforgiving, and Puerto Cabello lay in flames. A grim warning of the firepower that modern war can unleash. Families in Carabobo awoke to the sight of smoke columns clawing skyward. The horizon choked in gray, while the wail of emergency sirens mixed with the chopping blades of rescue helicopters racing toward the ruins. Militarily, the blow was decisive. Puerto Cabello's vast shipyard, the heart of Venezuela's naval repair and rearmament capacity, lay crippled. Within hours, Venezuelan command admitted that 2 Bastion P missile clusters and their main fire control radar were destroyed. What days earlier had been a coastal strike force was now a liability, its ability to challenge American sea power gone for months, perhaps years. For Washington, the cost was not measured in lives but in hardware and patience. Not a single American sailor or civilian perished. To U.S. officials, the strike was not vengeance but a calculated demonstration. Merchant shipping would be protected, and no challenge to its freedom of movement would be tolerated. By 7 a.m., fires still burned across Puerto Cabello as reports trickled into Washington, each one more staggering than the last. In under 2 hours, a strike meant to intimidate a single merchant ship had collapsed into disaster for Venezuela. The numbers told the story with merciless precision. Puerto Cabello Shipworks, a facility worth hundreds of millions, was obliterated. Damage estimated between $350 and $450 million, crippling the nation's ability to repair warships or assemble advanced missiles. 7 Onyx supersonic missiles, worth nearly $20 million, had been launched into one of the world's busiest trade corridors. Not a single one struck its target. In reply, 11 U.S. cruise missiles worth $60 million landed with pinpoint accuracy. The exchange was lopsided in every dimension. The human toll added a cruel weight. At least 32 workers killed, 88 more wounded, and families along the Carabobo coast shattered overnight. Hospitals overflowed, sirens wailed into dawn, and neighborhoods that once thrived on shipyard jobs now faced grief and ruin. Strategically, Venezuela's gamble had gutted its own defenses. Bastion launchers, radars, and a naval strike capability painstakingly built over years were silenced in one morning. International fallout was immediate. Insurers tripled premiums for any ship daring to enter Venezuelan waters. Tankers rerouted hundreds of miles to safer lanes, driving delays, higher costs, and new strains on fragile global markets. Caracas found itself more isolated than ever, as 20 nations condemned its attack on a civilian cargo vessel, while Washington broadcast high-definition drone footage of its restraint and precision strikes. As dawn rose over the Caribbean, Puerto Cabello's skyline glowed not with sunrise, but with the sickly orange of fire and ash. What had begun as a show of defiance became a monument to ruin. Venezuela lost more than $400 million in infrastructure, its largest shipyard reduced to rubble, its navy left toothless, and dozens of families thrust into mourning. By contrast, The United States counted no deaths, only missiles expended, a ledger of steel and fire that proved discipline could outweigh recklessness. The Liberty Star sailed onward, escorted not just by the Arleigh Burke but by the credibility of American resolve. Beyond the battlefield, the consequences rippled outward. Markets faltered, trade routes bent under the weight of new dangers, and Venezuelan families faced the silence of lost work and lost lives. The verdict was clear for all who watched. In modern war, speed and audacity do not decide the outcome. Discipline, preparation, and resolve do. What remains is more than wreckage. It is a warning. Missiles aimed at trade lanes strike more than ships. They strike economies, families, and the fragile stability of nations. Venezuela gambled with fire. America answered with precision, and the world now measures the cost in billions lost and lives cut short. The question left lingering is this: was this a clash of strength or a lesson in restraint? Because the next storm at sea may not only decide ships, but history itself.